Along the Welsh marches, those borderlands between England and Wales, runs Offa's Dyke. The borders look peaceful enough today, but after the Romans left England in the early 5th century, the petty border chieftains were engaged in a continuous struggle amongst themselves. Out of this melee, one man, Offa, emerged as the dominant English ruler and king of Mercia, with unprecedented power, to reign for 39 years until his death in 796. In an effort to stop the constant strife between the English and Welsh, Offa negotiated a borderline with the Welsh and constructed his massive bank and ditch earthwork from end to end of the border. He used westward-facing slopes wherever possible, making it clear that a Welshman would only cross the line when Offa saw fit. Today, of course, you don't need a king's permission to cross the line, nor do you normally have to fight your way across, and the modern traveller can approach the border by this elegant rainbow of steel soaring over the Severn. The motorway and the railway lead direct to Chepstow, an Anglo-Saxon name meaning market town. Set on a hill, the town falls sharply to the River Wye in a series of twisting, narrow streets to the castle, built by William Fitzosborne in 1067, and granted to him by the Conqueror by right of conquest. So Fitzosborne became one of the first Lords Marcher who guarded the borders from the Welsh. Offa, earlier by 3 centuries than the Normans, had started his dyke nearby and followed the River Wye along the crest of the hills which rise steeply behind Chepstow. It was from here, some 600 feet up, they say that the devil once preached from a rocky ledge known to this day as the Devil's Pulpit. The audience he was trying to subvert was the monks of Tintern Abbey below. Although so near the border towns of Monmouth and Chepstow, Tintern saw little of the English-Welsh struggle, and building went on steadily under the patronage of their Lord Marcher, the Earl of Warwick. But as the years went by, the kings needed more and more money, and Thomas Cromwell, Chancellor to Henry VIII, put through an act suppressing all monasteries with an income of less than £200 a year. Tintern could only manage £192, so the lead was stripped from the roof, and the bells were melted down and the abbey fell into decay. But King Henry's men couldn't strip Tintern of its essence. No one has ever successfully put Tintern's beauty into words, but perhaps William Wordsworth came nearest. To those who know thee not, no words can paint, and those who know thee know all words are faint. Over the hills from Tintern to the north lay the Marcher Lordship of Monmouth, with its unique fortified bridge gateway across the Monnow River. Whoever held Monmouth controlled the lower hills between the moorland heart of Wales and the wide fields of England. But to strengthen their grip even tighter, the Norman lords built 3 great castles to the west and north. 2 of them were partly fortresses and partly residences for succeeding owners, Skenfrith and Grosmont. The mightiest of the 3, White Castle, remained always a grimly efficient fighting structure with no welcoming domestic hearth. In the late 13th century, England became busy with its own civil war, and a Welshman, Llewellyn ap Griffith, saw his chances against the Marcher lords by leading a united Welsh force from north and south. From being a strong supporting bastion, White Castle found itself in the front line, and Llewellyn forced the Normans to recognize his conquests with a treaty. But alas, he underestimated the staying power of the lords and their mighty castles. With the Civil War over, they came back at him with a vengeance. In 10 years, Llewellyn fled to the Black Mountains, where he was pursued and killed. Amidst all this strife, there were those who found their own personal peace. In these same wild Black Mountains, into the melancholy vale of Ewias, William de Lacy, a Marcher lord, found his way. He decided to spend the rest of his days in seclusion, and at Llanthony Abbey he rebuilt the chapel. Something in the air in the vale must have had a profound spiritual effect, for he was soon joined by other warlords, who also gave up their wealth and power to live out their days in peace and solitude. Along the ridge of the Black Mountains runs Offa's Dyke Path, where now is the official English-Welsh border. Changes of weather in these barren heights occur with sudden savageness to catch the unwary traveller. The way is confused with crisscrossing sheep tracks, and the path reaches its highest point of just over 2,200 feet at the northern end of the range. There, the panorama of the Wye Valley stretches away to Hay-on-Wye and beyond. To Knighton, where the dyke ran through the centre of the town, and on to the blowy heights of Llanfair Hill and Spring Hill, where it is very much in evidence still. Below these heights, the dyke reappears on the edge of the fertile plain of Montgomery, which gave its name to the smallest county town in Britain. Today, Montgomery is a drowsy backwater with its Tudor, Elizabethan and Georgian houses round the charming market square. But once, Henry III built his castle against the Welsh high on the crags over the early settlement below. In its shadow, a town grew up in the valley. 3 times in 20 years, the Welsh burned the town, but they never reduced the castle. Henry had chosen his site well, for the castle lay directly on the road from Shrewsbury, and whoever was in possession was master of the only effective road to mid-Wales and the coast. To the north lie the Berwyn Mountains. The range is desolate and wild, a wind-blown watershed of moorlands and sheepwalks. There are no dramatic peaks, but it is here that the stream called Rhyadr appears and plunges over a cliff into a wooded gorge. Pistol Rhyadr is always called one of the 7 wonders of Wales. A picture of Pistol Rhyadr, painted by Wilson in the early 18th century, hangs in Chirk Castle. Tradition has it that while he was painting it, a Welsh shepherd asked him to include some sheeps. The artist, to humour him, did so with some large, ocean-going sheeps of the time. Chirk Castle, another of Edward I's border castles, has been the home of the Middleton family since 1595. Sir Thomas passed on the castle to his son, also Sir Thomas, who threw in his lot with the Roundheads. So the Royalists seized his castle, and Charles I spent 2 nights in this bedroom, on his way to Chester after his defeat at Rowton Moor. Later, becoming disaffected with the Republicans, Sir Thomas declared for Charles II and was rewarded with this magnificent ebony chest. Inlaid with tortoiseshell and ivory, the inside of the doors and front have Flemish paintings on copper, and hand-beaten silver decorations adorn the inner sanctuary. Truly a munificent reward for loyalty, however belated, to the Royalists. He also got his castle back, of course. With the castle being in the same family for so long, all the furniture seems to belong to the rooms, as successive owners have added their acquisitions over the years. Much of the loving restoration done by the present owner has been the work of local craftsmen, and the castle is a veritable treasure trove of incalculable worth. Of all its treasures, one of the most beautiful is the pair of wrought iron gates which were made in 1720 by the Davis brothers, local ironmasters and blacksmiths. The design, based on the Middleton crest with its hand and 3 wolves, is of striking complexity, and the elaborate and delicate tracery carry through the motifs to provide a remarkable example of 18th century craftsmanship in iron. Robert and Thomas Davis made many gates for mansions and churches after this, when the church gates brought them national fame. A few miles north of Chirk is the beautiful vale of Llangollen, through which flows the River Dee. In the closing years of the 18th century, canals were much in vogue, and Thomas Telford, master road and bridge builder, was called upon to build an aqueduct to carry the Ellesmere Canal 120 feet above the turbulent Dee. One can easily imagine the amazement shown by people of the time when they saw boats gliding sedately along the top of this unique structure. Telford had soon realized that a conventional brick or stone framework wouldn't do, so he planned a cast iron trough lying along the top of stone piers. This was an entirely new concept for canals, and the first time in the world that iron was used in this way on the grand scale. The cast iron trough, 12 feet wide, has dovetailed joints, and the side plates are wedge-shaped, just like stones in a masonry arch. As it carries a footpath, the canal itself is only just over 7 feet wide. There's a sturdy fence on the footpath side, but the other is completely unprotected, and many voyagers in a narrow boat have had to shut their eyes if they find themselves on that side of the boat. Majestic masonry piers and arches carry the Pontcysyllte aqueduct 1,000 feet across the valley. And this most spectacular feature of the canal system is one of the great monuments to 18th century industrial architecture. It cost £47,000. A modest sum, said Telford. On the north side of Llangollen is another architectural curiosity, Plasnewydd, the home of the ladies of Llangollen. The ladies were 2 independently minded Irish aristocrats, Lady Eleanor Butler and Sarah Ponsonby, who left their home in Waterford and travelled all over Wales. They finally became tenants at Plasnewydd, a plain stone-built house set in farmland. With them was their treasured maid known as Molly the Bruiser, after she flung a candlestick at a fellow servant. They were considered extremely odd by all those who came across them. Their hair was short, they wore men's hats and ties. But they also rapidly transformed their plain house into a fantasy of delicate wood carvings bought, or as some said, stolen from local houses and churches. Oddly enough, it was later Victorian owners who created the black and white effect. But Plas Newydd is a newcomer in the ancient history of the Welsh Marches. On the hill behind stands the castle of Dinas Bran, built on the site of a stronghold of Eliseg, Prince of Powys and contemporary of Offa, by Madog ap Griffith, who was buried in the abbey of Vallecrusis below, and which he'd founded. Towering over the Vale of Llangollen and Vallecrusis is the limestone escarpment of Eglwyseg, and below the gleaming crags runs Offa's path. Now the ground rises up to form the Clwdian range, which defines the northern end of the Welsh Marches. From the vantage point of Merl Famau, with its never-finished Jubilee Tower set up to celebrate the 50th year of George III's reign, can be seen a vast area of Wales. The Llantysilio Mountains, the great massifs of Snowdon and Cadair Idris. And to the northwest lies the fertile valley of Clwyd and the Celtic Sea. And it's on these high hills that Offa's dyke dwindles and can no longer be traced. In his reign, Offa brought all the southern English kingdoms under his power. He made his influence felt with the Pope and Charlemagne. His coinage was the finest since Roman times, and his reign was one of competent administration. It's said that Offa died here at Rhuddlan in the Clwyd Valley, 2 miles from the Celtic Sea and the end of his great defensive dyke, in the last great Welsh attack in 796. The dramatic ruin of Rhuddlan Castle, built some 500 years after his death by Edward I, still fighting the Welsh, makes a fitting climax to the extraordinary story of achievement by this early King of Mercia, whose dyke traces the path of Britain's bygone, turbulent border struggles.